Hi, I'm Anna. It's definitely been a while since I last uploaded, but in the time that I've been gone, Acrobat has gotten some changes, so I wanted to make an updated guide for it. I'll be going over some core Acrobat mechanics, as well as the new mechanics of Acrobat. This video will be split into multiple sections, and I will leave timestamps in the description. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So how does Acrobat actually work? First, let's go over some things. Acrobat turns your spin attack into loss rate, which is a two-part spell. It first dashes you forwards, then it launches you upwards. A jet dash and updraft if you will. This is used alongside another ability, Hop, which is used by double tapping space, or whatever your jump bar is. Essentially, Hop is just a double jump that cancels any following momentum. Using these two to fly, Acrobat weaves other spells into this, such as Dash for movement, or Smoke Bombs and Multi-Hit for damage when in a fight. Using these other spells also cancels the rising spell cost of Spin Attack, as well as providing the utility that the spell provides. Some things were added rather recently to Acrobat. Now, by hitting enemies while in the air, you generate momentum stacks, which are used in Swan Dive to jump down and deal burst damage to enemies. Swan Dive, as I previously mentioned, is Acrobat's new burst ability, and its damage scales with how many momentum stacks you have. By hitting mobs midair, you also proc Weightless, which is Acrobat's mana printing ability. Flow State was reworked into Aerial Ace, which, alongside Swan Dive, gives Acrobat a little but much needed damage buff. Shurikens, which used to just proc off of a main attack after a dash, was reworked slightly. Honestly, I don't think there's that much difference to it. In addition to Acrobat abilities, however, Acrobat most commonly deploys two other trickster abilities, which are Sticky Bombs and Blazing Powder. Sticky Bombs give a significant damage increase to Smoke Bombs, as well as, of course, causing them to stick to enemies. Blazing Powder gives loss rate a slight damage boost, but is mainly used for its blinding utility. In this particular build, since I use it for loot runs, I'm running Writing Reflex, as well as cheaper bombs and Black Hole, but generally once you get Acrobat down, it's better to just drop those two and run Sticky Bombs. Next, let's go over some of Acrobat's general flight mechanics. So, as you might know if you've read any patch notes, the Acrobat Super Jump tech was added as a feature to loss rate instead of as a mechanic. Before, if you timed Hop exactly right, there was a mechanic where it interacted with loss rate's upwards motion and gave you a lot more vertical height. Learning this super jump is one of the most important things for Acrobat, otherwise you're going to drop out of the air and just lose height. How can we actually time this super jump though? Well, Looney and T both have videos on this, and I'll link their videos below since the mechanics are still similar. However, I have a simpler method to try. Time your hop to be one spellcast time after loss rate. This might sound complicated, but here's an example. So, see how I'm using hop right after casting dash after loss rate, and I'm not waiting for dash to finish? It should be right after your last input on your mouse. So if this makes any more sense, your cycle should be dash, X, hop, so X being any other spell. This timing fluctuates with your CPS, as well as if you have Mythic Aspect or not. However, the timing is roughly the same. I have tested without the aspect. You'll know you're doing this right if you can visibly see yourself gaining height just through loss rate and hop. Practice and get this down before going forwards. I'm not great with Acrobat either, and I think everybody should practice this. Use whatever spell you want for the timing. Here I was using Multi-Hit before ping started going crazy on me. It says I have 60, but server lag is wild. But yeah, use whatever spell you want for the timing, and cycle between loss rate and your chosen spell while timing hop. I would suggest practicing with different spells as well, just to get a feel for it, since you will be changing spells a lot during combat. Previously I was using Multi-Hit, but now you can see that I'm using Smoke Bombs. You can also use Dash just facing down if you want to practice that way. However, I would suggest practicing with dash first, since spell costs on dash are traditionally the lowest, as it's a movement spell, but also since, it moves you around. Super jump is the core of acrobat flight. Without it, you can manage, but it will be really janky, and you will lose a lot of height. Once you get the timing of super jump, practice with dash and just fly around like I'm doing right now. It should be pretty obvious, but this movement of dash and loss rate is used to travel and move around. It is probably the most common travel method and spell cycle that you will use as acrobat. That being said, you know flight basics now. Congrats! Next, let's move on to using acrobat in combat. For the sake of explanation, let's assume that you're not using riding reflex. During combat, acrobat spell cycle is usually a 1-3 hop cycle. What this means is loss rate, which is your first spell, then multi-hit, which is your third spell, hence the designation 1-3. Hop is used right after multi-hit has finished inputting to keep height. At times, replace multi-hit with smoke bombs and dash. Smoke bombs provide passive damage as well as racking up weightless and momentum, and of course, dash is used for movement. As you can probably tell, I'm still struggling with this, but it works, and you will get this down, I promise. So the reason I like to personally fly so low though, is because my Jasmine Bloom range is significantly shorter due to Hanafubuki's major ID, but also so that loss rate hits target. The reason you want loss rate hitting target is one, of course, it's a bit more damage, but also mainly because of Blazing Pounder, which blinds the enemy, which in turn makes flying low and going in for multi-hits so much safer. In general, like everything else, I would still suggest practicing with a combat dummy or in housing to get mechanics down before actually using acrobat in combat. As for how Swan Dive plays into this, it's pretty simple. Once you get 5 momentum, or anything above 3, that's usually your choice, but I would go for 5. Hit crouch, which will proc, stomp, and drop you down to deal burst damage. This is Acrobat's burst option, but since I am using a loot run tree and of course I have riding reflex, which will cancel out the crouch to drop down part, I'm simply stopping myself midair and letting myself fall down to deal damage instead of hitting crouch. To get back up from Swan Dive, you can cast dash downwards and Dancing Blade will bounce you back up. Now please note that this will only work after you perform Swan Dive, since Dancing Blade will only proc after Swan Dive. If you need to get off the ground in a normal situation, you can either use loss rate and a vertical dash to get off the ground, to gain as much vertical height as possible. I call this the super dash. Or you can use normal loss rate and hop movement to get back up. Again, I would still suggest practicing with a combat dummy. Let's quickly overview builds and aspects. So, Acrobat builds focus a lot on spell cost reduction as well as mana sustain, which is justified given just how mana hungry the archetype is. It might not look like it, just in Win Builder, but you are spamming 24/7, you will need sustain. With the recent waitlist changes, however, Acrobat, you can build a bit more into damage, since you can sustain a bit more on waitlist hits alone, and mana sustain isn't as big a factor as before, but still, sustain. Given this, along with the fact that Acrobat needs a lot of abilities for you to use it properly, it tends to be an endgame archetype. This is the Hanafubuki build that I'm using right now. It was made by Newt, shout out. I'll also leave Sugo's build guide in the description, where you can find a lot of other builds and just builds in general. Finally, Sugo went over this, but let's talk about aspects. So most of Acrobat's aspects are quality of life, since it's not as aspect dependent as, say, Shadestepper. However, I would definitely recommend the Mythic, multi-hit range, spin attack range, and the aerial ace aspects. The last is up to you, though I would probably run the Jasmine Bloom AoE aspect. Something that I would like to just quickly mention is that Acrobat probably deals the least damage out of all the assassin archetypes, or actually, out of most archetypes in general. So, yeah, don't expect to deal a lot of damage while running Acrobat. However, through recent patches, as in like the one yesterday, or a couple days ago, depending on when this video comes out, Acrobat can actually deal some decent damage now. However, I still think that Acrobat is a bit weaker than most archetypes. If you are looking for something fun to play and don't really care about, damage, etc., I'd definitely give Acrobat a try. It's definitely worth it. It's really fun. But if you're looking for investment for raids, etc., you really care about your damage leaderboard, I would not suggest Acrobat. Go use 3 ability shards and play Shade Stepper instead. I yapped a lot, but that's it. Since Wynn has frequent patches, as in bi-weekly, this video might become slightly outdated, like really quickly, but hopefully it doesn't happen in the near future, so hopefully this is good for now, unless, Acrobat gets reworked again. There are better guides out there with better mechanical explanation out there. This is just a guide that simplifies some things and expands on some things, as well as addressing, the newer mechanics. I list all the previously discussed Acrobat guides below. You've probably already seen Sugo's guide, which is basically just what I said, but in less words, but I thought I'd make this anyways. Last but not least, thanks for watching. And remember, when in doubt, mashing is real.